Hello everyone, welcome to Fast Track on Herald Global. I am Saimik Sen. Joining us today, the Director of Goa Institute of Management, Professor Ajit Parulekar.
Entertainment.
Thank you so much for taking out this time for us and welcome to Herald Global. I would like to take this opportunity to ask you to tell us about your journey.
Sure. I'm really, I was brought up in Goa.
Sure.
I'm actually a pharmacy graduate, and then I'm a pharmacy postgraduate. And by the time I was doing my pharmacy postgrad, till then I didn't even consider of an MBA as an option. I didn't know much about it, honestly, at that point in time. And when I was doing my master's in pharmacy, I moved from Goa to Ahmedabad. And I met a couple of people who were seniors who worked in the product management function. And I was absolutely fascinated by the product management function. I mean, till then, I was quite clear that my father was a research scientist. So my father was one of the members of the first Indian expedition to the Antarctic, and quite a celebrated scientist.
Okay.
So I was quite keen on a research career till I got exposed to people who were working in product management. So a couple of people working in companies like Torrent, Zydus Cadila. I mean, then it was just Cadila and Alembic, Sun Pharmaceuticals. Then Sun used to be in Baroda. So I had a couple of seniors there, and I was absolutely fascinated. So at the end of that, at the end of the year, when companies came to campus for placement, I told the placement guy that, look, I'm not interested in either research or production or quality control or sales, which are the roles that are offered to M Farms. I said, I'm interested in product management. And, the person there, luckily, for me, was a person who did work in product management. So what he said is, let me have a conversation with you. And post the conversation, he said, I like you. Why don't you come to our head office tomorrow? And I went and met the general manager marketing, and he offered me, a fresh M-Farm, he offered me a position in product management.
Oh, that's great.
So I worked there. This is a company called Core Healthcare, which is run by the Handas. I worked there for 7-8 months. And then I moved, my boss then moved to Bombay, and he said, Ajit, I'd like you to come and join me. And then I joined a pharmaceutical company called Unichem. I worked there for close to 5 years. And when I was working there, what happens in pharma, product manager does a lot of training of medical reps and of people like that. And when I was doing that training, I kept on getting consistent feedback that, Ajit, you're a fantastic teacher and trainer. Alongside, I also got, a marketing degree. So I did an MBA from NMIMS.
Okay.
And that's the time I decided that teaching is something I'd like to do. I was really passionate about it. So I left the pharma industry to come back to Goa to set up a business of my own. So I started a small .com at that point in time. And along with that, I said, because I like to teach, I started teaching at the Goa Institute of Management at the Goa University also, on a part-time basis, just because I like teaching. 6 months later, I joined the GI, and this was all in the year 2000. So I've been here, I've been here at the Goa Institute of Management for 22 years since. And in these 22 years, I've had a fantastic journey. I mean, so what else I've done is I've continued to learn all along. So in these 20 years, I've also got a third master's. I took some time off and, did a master's at London School of Economics in health economics and policy. I also did a PhD in marketing in consumer branding. Yeah. So along with teaching, I did enjoy also doing consulting and research projects for industry. I did quite a lot of those. And I had the good fortune of working in different functions in the Goa Institute of Management. So heading, admissions, heading placements. And then I also launched a new program in healthcare management. And subsequently, for quite some time, the board of GIM was asking me, why don't you assume the director's position? I wasn't very keen initially. For many years, I said no, because my kids were young, and I didn't think that was the right time for me to take up a very challenging career that would take away time from young kids at home. And then eventually in 2015, I agreed to take on the leadership role. So that's largely been. So I've been the director since 2015, and There's a lot that I've been able to do in this period of time. 22 years at this place. It's an outstanding institution to be part of.
Goa Institute of Management, you have introduced certain courses. Would you like to tell us about it?
Yes. So something like around a decade back, a little more than that, realized that management is getting specialized. And that's something that people are saying today, right? I just saw the GMAC report. So there was a GMAC every year comes with trends. So GMAC are the guys who do the GMAT exam. That's the main exam worldwide for admission to the top MBA program. So every year they come on trends on employment, trends on admissions, trends on what's happening to the MBA. What they're now saying is that students are expecting two trends in MBAs. One is more specialized and not a generic MBA.
Okay.
And second thing is shorter duration. So that not a generic MBA is something that we realized more than 10 years back. And we started therefore saying that our expansion is going to be in cutting edge new verticals that are specialized enough to require special attention. So in 2011-12, that time I was not the director. I reached out to GIM board and said, I think there is a need for healthcare because that's a highly unorganized sector. It's booming and growing really fast. And India doesn't do well on healthcare, in terms of either the spend or in terms of outcomes. I said, that's a big need. And over a year and a half, I did a lot of work to present to them why we need to do this. And they said, Ajit, this is good, but we'll agree to this provided you lead the program. So we launched one of the first top business schools coming with a healthcare program. This was in the year 2013. Subsequently, we realized big data analytics is something that's driving every business. Whether it is retail, whether it is manufacturing, automobile, healthcare, banking, financial services, you name the sector, and you find that data analytics is driving every sector. I mean, anything, art, wine making, you name it, and you find data analytics is playing a lead role. So we decided that while data science is happening in engineering schools, managing businesses using data analytics is something that's going to be important. We do understand that data analytics over a period of time is getting automated, but understanding data to take decision making in managerial roles will never get automated. And therefore, that's something we better. And so we were one of the very early institutes to start a data analytics program. True to the expectations, within a year, we doubled the capacity. And the first batch itself, absolutely. First batch itself had better placement results than a 25-year-old program that we've been running, which has been a very good program. Okay. Right? So after data analytics, we said, what next? And we realized that the banking industry is seeing a sea of change. And the major change is new age technology. So today, if you really look at all the new interventions in banking are non-traditional financial interventions. They're all technology interventions, right? Yes. I mean, so if you look at right from, all these Paytm type of payment wallets to the need today for any of us, I think most of us today don't walk into a retail branch for close to an entire year, because everything is possible today to do either through your phone, through a computer, through so many digital modes. And we realize, therefore, that banking is getting transformed by AI, ML, deep learning, some bit of blockchain on the sidelines, data analytics, of course. And therefore, I had a team in place. We went and met managing directors of something like 20 banks, NBFCs, insurance companies, and all of them said that banks of the future are not going to be like the banks of today. And he said the one skill set that we find is really missing is the tech financial kind of people. That's one thing we don't see. So we decided, therefore, to start a new age BIFS program, Banking, Insurance, Financial Services program. Though we started that, and that's very popular right now, and we think that's again going to be an extremely successful program. But one area that we've not yet, because of just bandwidth issues, one of the major areas, the existing bank staff needs to be retrained. And that's something that, I think is a big opportunity there. So those are the three new programs, plus a new program that we started on, a doctoral program, a fellow program in management. So these are the four programs we started in just about, last 5-6 years.
Please tell us about your research interests and how you see them fitting in with the college's mission.
Yeah, so first I'll talk about the overall research of the institution, right? So the overall research of the institution, for like most top Indian business schools, for close to 2 decades, we were a great teaching institution. outstanding students passing out, working in all the top organizations in the country. But we realized that if you're going to call yourself an academic institution, you have to contribute towards a body of knowledge. And therefore, then what we did is we changed the way we looked at the institution. We said it's compulsory for everybody on my faculty to do high quality research. In the last 5 years, we've not recruited anybody who's a non-PhD. We will. I mean, it's not important to take only PhDs, but because we had earlier on as a teaching institution, we had a lot more people with industry experience only. We had to balance that out. Even people who came with an industry experience. We have people with, who were senior vice presidents who came and joined in, CEOs who joined in. After 25 years of work experience, we insisted they have to do a PhD, they have to do research. And we've had some amazing results. So today I have less than 10% of my faculty who's not a PhD. And even those who are not a PhD, we're saying at least practitioner research you've got to do. Because we said, if you're not a scholar, then you don't belong in a classroom. You have to be a practitioner and a scholar, both. You have to be coming with new theory. You have to be creating new knowledge. And that is something that students should be able to see. And also inculcate that kind of a mindset of original thinking in students. Personally, if you ask me, my own research and kind of professional interest journey has undergone a sea change. I mean, my first love has been consumer marketing and really branding. And that's something that I've done for most of my professional life. First in industry, and then also in academia and all my research interest. When we started the healthcare program, because I had a background in healthcare marketing, it was assumed by everybody that I would want to build brands in healthcare, something that I had done in the past. But my major interest in healthcare was not building brands. It was a completely different interest. That is making the health system robust enough to allow for great quality healthcare and accessible healthcare. So my motivation in healthcare is not building brands, but to make sure that we have great quality healthcare available for everybody, irrespective of their means. And therefore, my entire interest and my research interest in healthcare is in an area of financing and payment systems for healthcare. Right? How do you generate resources for healthcare, and how do you put in payment systems by which you can have better outcomes coming? Of course, at the time I did this, I also spent a lot more time in administration, so I don't have as much of time to do that research. So what we did do is I had people who we recruited. So today GIM does a lot of work on the Ayushman Bharat and the PMJ. I have faculty members here. I don't personally do it as much, but this passion of mine is something that GIM is now a front runner there. I have faculty who've done now, they're just completing their 6th project funded by WHO on PMJ in different states in the country. I have another faculty member who's working with a Harvard public school, the public health school of Harvard, called the Howard Chan School for Public Health, working on digital health in a couple of states in India. We have somebody else who's working in McGill and with all the top agencies worldwide. Now that's an area of excellence. GIM for 3 years in a row now, we organize one of India's top healthcare conclaves, focusing on access and finance and insurance and that kind of thing. The other area that I'm very passionate about, and that's the center of excellence in GIM, is responsible management. Now, that's not something that GIM took with, because of me. We were started by Jesuit priests. And therefore, right from day one, before the Howards and Whartons were talking about ethics and responsibility, because we were started by Jesuit priests and we are non-profit, we don't have an owner. We are a private institution, but no individual owner. We always looked at what can we do for society. So today, we have 3 different centers, research centers. One is the Center for Social Sensitivity and Action. Other is a new center that I started, which is a Center for for excellence in sustainable development. And the third, we just started a center this year, a year back, which is Center for Public Policy and Governance. Now, the Center for Social Sensitivity and Action, which is over a 10-year center, we just completed a program called as the Give Goa initiative, where what we decided is business school students will be leaders of society and industry tomorrow. They have to, right from the start, take society along with them. I mean, they will want to have big salaries and become CEOs and things like that, but they should not do it alone. They have to make sure that they're carrying society along with them. And therefore, what we do in this program is every student gives one entire day a week through the entire first year, working with an NGO or a government department or with a CSR initiative of a company or with a school or something like that. And they work on the project, year long. GIM now has had more than 30,000 man days of students that have been given to the Give Goa initiative. And we must have had something like around 70, 80 projects multiplied by 100. So roughly 800 projects have been successfully completed there in areas linked to employability of students, to healthcare, to old age, to autistic children or special needs children, to farmers, to poverty, temple trust, church trust, ICAR, in agricultural research, all kinds of things that we think benefit society. In the return to benefiting and giving back to Goa, the student also gets socially sensitized to problems that are there in society. Just like that. So GIM is the first business school in India on whose website, what we do is we monitor our contribution to each of the 17 SDGs, and it is available real time on GIM's website. Right? So you will have on each of the 17 SDGs, and you can click in on each of them and see which research project aligned to it, which student Give Goa project, which faculty's initiative, which course, and therefore we're able to do that. We are also every year now we do a sustainability report. So because, and I think I personally fit in well with it, because I told you my father was a scientist, he was a marine biologist, and therefore he used to be on the pollution control board as a scientist on 5-6 different states in India. And therefore, right from the time I was a child, kind of environmental sustainability has been ingrained in me. And therefore, what we've done on our campus, and this is something, the legacy of our founder at GIM, plus, my whole faculty, what we do is we have today a 675 kilowatt solar project on campus. Right from the start of this new campus of ours, all rainwater harvesting happens. We do an audit, per capita audit of water consumption, of energy consumption, of waste generated, of waste treated. We have a dry waste plant on campus to do a 8-way segregation of all the waste on campus. We have a wet waste plant to treat all the wet waste that's generated on campus. So what we're doing when we do this, and we talk about this a lot, we publish this, it's there on our website. It's part of a course that students go, in addition to Give Goa, they do a course called SRA, which is basically social responsibility and action. And as a result, students are aware that, and when we're doing this, we're very clear. We're not telling students that you cut down on profits and invest on, responsibility. No, we're saying responsibility is a way of life. So look at business models that ensure profitability while being sustainable on the environmental and people front. We do a lot of other social sensitivity. In the social responsibility, what we do is, so wherever we can recruit a person from the local Golwada and Korea villages, we recruit from there. So all my gardening staff, all my housekeeping staff, almost all my security staff, maintenance staff, wherever we can have. So we have, out of the 300 plus total people who work for GIM, I think we have over 60% of people who come from the local community. Obviously, when we're getting faculty, we get faculty from all world over. We need the best people there. But wherever we can bring in a local person, try to do that, because that's the right thing to do. Yeah. So in research also, we have a lot of work, therefore, that happens in this whole area of sustainability, right? From cases, everything, biodiversity. We just are coming out with a new publication on biodiversity at GIM, where each and every plant species that's on campus, we have it geotagged, we have a write-up on it, and we know where the location is, and we are constantly looking at promoting, native biodiversity in Goa. We collaborate with various local agencies like the Goa Biodiversity Board, ICAR in Goa, the Zonal Agricultural Office. With all of these, in addition to it, globally, we work with the UN PRME. I'm on the board of the Global Compact, the Governing Council in India. We work with the UN SDSN, which is basically Sustainable Development Network. We work with various agencies like, the Global Responsible Leadership Institute, GRLI, GBSN, and my faculty members who are in these two centers, one of the, these three centers, one is led by a faculty called Divya Singhal, who's globally very well networked with all of these people in these agencies. I think she also gets rated as, I think last year she won the PRME, runner-up of the PRME Worldwide Award on being somebody who's looking at responsible management. The Goa Institute of Management was globally in the top 4 institutes in terms of positive impact rating 2021, which says, are we, so the best for the world business school rather than best in the world business school. Things that, all of us here, all my faculty, my board, all of us are very proud of.
That's really nice. The pandemic has affected the student fraternity a lot. So, what is your take on the online classes and the distance learning, especially in a time like this?
My belief is, I'm out and out an optimist. I think every adversity comes with a silver lining. Undoubtedly, the pandemic had a lot of, so to say, a lot of loss on many counts. Right? I mean, there was loss of life, and almost everybody has had somebody in either immediate family, friends, or the next level of family and friends that they've lost, or that had several severe kind of issues like loss of job, loss of employment, multiple kind of different setbacks of different types. But having said that, that's also been tremendous progress for humanity as a result of this. There's been a fast forwarding of remote working. There has been a questioning of traditional models of working, traditional models of families, and traditional models of learning. And I think when you're doing this in a short span of time, suddenly I realize that I'll be able to cut down forever at least 40% of my travel. There's a lot of unnecessary travel that we had to do. But today now on both sides, they realize how it is efficient that some of that will get cut out. Of course, undoubtedly face-to-face meetings and face-to-face classes have a lot of advantages. There is so much of learning, so much of interaction, networking that happens on the sidelines through chitter chatter, through unstructured, kind of interactions. There's so much of it that has to happen. And that's something that we've lost out. One thing that did happen is from a faculty base who never did online teaching. Everybody today does online teaching, right? And therefore, I think that's been a major, let's say, capacity building at all levels, from nursery and primary school till PhD programs. I think that's really fantastic. However, students have lost out certain things. I mean, social interaction is extremely important. And the business school degree, which is just 2 years, out of the 2 years, many of the students, 18, 19 months, they've just been at home. And therefore, the social experience, they've lost out. So consciously what we do is we look at diversity on campus. So we bring in students from almost all the 28 states. Now, if you're at home, you're not going to get the same experience of living on a campus where you have this.
Of course not.
Why is there a lot of activities? So we have 26 student clubs. They did all their activities online. So therefore, there is some new learning there. But actually putting up an activity where you have people come to campus, housing them, arranging transport, doing up the place, putting up pendals, having, escorting CEOs of companies and all that has its own, set of learning challenges. You will envision a budget and the budget will go for a toss. That's great learning. And, some of those learnings got compromised. Of course, there is another part. This is also, I believe this is a generation. That's not going to be a generation. A lot of people, there are a lot of jokes of, a doctor who is the COVID, pass out doctor. I just think that people who are passing out at this time, they're not going to be people who are going to be a deprived lot. They're going to be an exceptional lot, because the kind of adversity that they are facing in these 1.5 years is an adversity that no business school student has faced in the last 20 years. The ambiguity. So today, for example, students don't know whether 3 weeks from now, they're going to be back on offline or online. That kind of ambiguity is something that's rampant in business, but we don't get an opportunity to train students that at all. So these students have been dealing with ambiguity for the last 2 years. Will I have, physical interviews for admission, or will I have online interviews? Will it be hybrid interviews? They don't know. Will I be working from home at that point in time? Will I be called back to my work location? So should I be giving my interviews from Bangalore or from Delhi? I don't know. I don't know till 2 weeks before whether I'm going to be in class or I'm not going to be. I don't know whether my parents are going to be at home or they're going to be, so all this, in my opinion, for somebody who's looking at roles in leadership, management, and business, I think this is phenomenal learning, which is impossible for us to be able to kind of curate and kind of, so to say, organize for. And therefore, I think this is going to be a blessed generation. Those who were in business school and those who were in engineering school and those who went through the COVID experience, I think that's going to give them some life lessons that many of us otherwise would have not had. Luckily, we are also, from a teacher and administrator point of view, I know as an administrator, I really don't know 7 days from now. So I've had postponed convocations, cancelled convocations, physical to virtual convocations, same with meetings, same with so many other things. And I think, therefore, the learnings that we've had on how to deal with complexity, with ambiguity, with change in the scenario overnight virtually, I think that's fantastic.
What are your views on working of the government-owned institutions versus the private ones?
I would any day choose working with a private institution, and I would work with a private institution because I'm also on the executive council of the Goa University, and I'm familiar with. I give talks gratis to a lot of colleges and schools. I think that's the duty that each of us have to help the education system. I do think that the kind of flexibility that you require for excellence, that has to be there in all education institutions. I think you have to bring in great quality teachers, train them well, and then give them the freedom on what they should do in their classrooms. I don't think it should be regimented. And I think government institutions have a lot of shackles of procedures. There are some good that comes out of those procedures, but I think innovation doesn't come through procedures and regimentation. Innovation comes through flexibility and freedom. And I think that flexibility and freedom is something that private institutions allow for. The only thing that I do think is, I do think that there is some bit of skepticism in the government about private institutions. Not just about education institutions, but otherwise also private industry. They feel that, private means profit and nothing else. Private means profit at all costs. That's not really true. A lot of people who join private academic institutions, they've left private sector jobs, they've left industry jobs and come at a significant pay cut because they are motivated. They want to make a difference. They want to do this. And therefore, their motivations are pure and good. And therefore, I do think that private institutions have a great role to play. At the same time, I do think that there are a lot of outstanding public institutions in our country. And if you look at, the IITs, the IIMs, IISCR, IISC, AIMS, these are outstanding institutions. The one thing that that I think has been a positive change there is that these institutions, I think, why is it that these institutions are better than other public institutions? And I just think because they function a lot more autonomously. They have today, like the top IIMs chose that they don't want government funding if it means there will be clause that will come along with it. They're very clear on saying, we'll give us the opportunity to generate our own fund and give us the freedom with it. And therefore, if you have good, strong boards and governance procedures, I do think you must give government engineering colleges, government medical colleges, you must give government schools a lot more freedom to be able to employ better quality faculty, to be able to bring in people who are visiting. So, when we bring in visiting faculty, if I have to compare with, I know how government colleges will pay, I think, 1/10 of what we would pay a visiting faculty. How can you bring in people? I mean, I know people come for the love of teaching also, but you also have to have a sustainable model in the long period of time. The IIMs, on the other hand, because they have the flexibility, the IIMs pay double of what we can also pay, right? And therefore, when you do that, you will get outstanding people. It's not money alone, but I'm saying other small things also, organizing people to travel. If you tell somebody who's the CEO of a company that, I'll give you a 2-tier train fare to come in, the person doesn't want money, but they're not going to be able to say, I'm going to travel, 24 hours to take a 4 hours class, is not something they're going to do. And therefore, we need to be able to give that kind of flexibility and freedom. We have to trust institutions. The other thing is, I think there has to be a more level playing ground for government versus private institutions. When I say level playing ground, what I mean is, all institutions, including private institutions, should be get access to let's say, research funding.
Sure.
Research funding should be based on output, should be based on credibility, should be based on the researchers who are taking it and the kind of facilities that the institutions have. What does happen, of course, is private institutions, have to struggle a lot more to get those funds. Government institutions get them much more naturally. And I think it should be a little bit more level playing ground if you're going to be able to bring in that kind of success. I'm very clear in my mind that there is a lot of space that is required for both great quality private and public institutions for healthcare to be, for education to be, substantially better in our country.
Goa is known as the tourism hub of India. So how can we make Goa as the education hub? What are the measures according to you?
Yeah, so Goa has a lot of things that many people are not aware of. People only think about Goa as a tourism place. Goa also has the highest per capita income as a state in the country. Most people don't know that. Goa also, in terms of healthcare, on almost all the healthcare outcomes, would rank in the top 3 in the country. I mean, whether it is infant mortality rates, among the lowest infant mortality rates, maternal mortality rates. I mean, anything. I mean, the total fertility rates. I mean, whichever kind of measure you look at, Goa does reasonably well. So if you have a prosperous population and you have, a healthy population, I think that's a great starting point, right? The second thing I think is Goa from a industry attraction point of view. Goa is, whenever I talk to any of our partner schools in Europe or in the US, they think India means large populations. Goa is not like that. Goa is atypical in that sense. So Goa, what is atypical is Goa has a total population of just 15 lakhs, just a little over 15 lakhs, which is for a state, right? Most Indian cities have a much larger population than that.
True.
The second thing about Goa is Goa has kind of the reverse of the country in terms of urbanization. Around 68-69% of Goa is urbanized and only around 30% is rural. Now, all these, I think, and Goa has good connectivity. I mean, from an airport, from waterways, from trains, from all of these, reasonably good connectivity is what Goa has. I think all of these are great in terms of, all these are good factors in terms of becoming an educational hub. Goa doesn't have the ability to take up large industry, right? And Goa should not. Being a tourism place, being a tourist attraction, you should not have polluting large industry in a place like Goa. You must have more knowledge industries. And what better than, so I think 2 industries are great for Goa. One is the whole tech startup ecosystem, right? Because Goa affords a great quality of life. It's a small place that gives you all the pleasures of urban life without the negatives of overpopulated, high traffic, high people density, high traffic density. None of those things are there. And you get great quality of life, which is good for startups, which is also good for, scholars. So it's a great place for faculty to come and, to set up. The only challenge, I think, for education institutions the state needs to take care of is land bank is a problem. So Goa, for education institutions to come, the government has to set, aside some committed land for having educational kind of, parks where an institution can just come, have this particular kind of credibility, and because of that, the institution should have easier access to land. Others, Goa, that's the challenge. Getting large tracts of land is the only challenge. Otherwise, I think Goa has ticks all the right boxes for being an educational, hub.
So what is your take on the upcoming Goa election, especially with so many new parties coming at the fray?
Yeah, so I would prefer to steer clear of, any conversation related to the upcoming elections. But I just think what's suddenly happening is you have just too many players right now, right? There are too many players. I can just say overall about all of I think the negative thing that I see is I think the concentration of all the parties without exception seems to be on freebies. And I think that doesn't augur well. I don't think economies get built on subsidies. I think they get killed by subsidies. Efficiency, productivity is kind of eroded away if you give subsidies. At least that's my personal take on it. I don't think that's auguring well. The second thing is, I think there are some things that they're completely skirting the issue. Like, I'm really upset about the fact that Goa has not yet started schools. So there are students, who are let's say, up to the standard 8, and students who are in first year and second year of college. They've not been into school for, I don't think, even a single day in 18 months. And none of these aspirant political parties have talked about this in their manifestos. I think that's really, really sad that education is kind of given the shots, kind of end of the stake. I think that's unfair. But otherwise, I don't have any other thing specifically on, which party and what. I just hope that whoever comes to power, I just hope that they're looking at, at some of the issues we looked at, making Goa educational hub, making sure that, telecommunication is better in Goa, making sure that, healthcare is even further improved. When, whilst we are in the top 3 in the country, we should benchmark with the best in the world. And same with, quality of education, implementation of NEP and things like that. I would have liked to see some of these as, a part of election manifestos of different parties, rather than, we will not charge you this bill and not charge you that bill and give you so much, of money free and, a house free and all that. I don't think that's the right way to go.
My last question to you: how would you go about the most recent spike in COVID cases in Goa? Do you think it could have been avoided had the government put more restrictions?
See, I think worldwide now what it seems to be the right way to go forward is restrictions cannot go on forever, right? And I think it was right that restrictions were put early on during first and second wave. But I think we can't forever. This is something that's here to stay. I also see what the global evidence, and because of my background in healthcare, seems to say is, I think something like the Omicron variant, where right now it looks like, if you look at the mortality rates, I mean, even though the cases in Goa spiked to over 3,000, I think the highest number of people that died on that day were 20. I mean, it's still a reasonably high number. But I think if you compare with what happened in the second wave and even the first wave, I think what's happened is people have got the exposure. Almost everybody that I know of today has had a flu-like, COVID-like, thing happening in the last 1.5 months. And most people, almost everybody has emerged of it back to work, back to school, ready and about fine. And I think, therefore, that's the right thing to do. Of course, the challenge in all of this is it's always a risk, right? I mean, nobody worldwide knows what's going to happen. And therefore, we must allow our politicians and our bureaucrats to take some of these risks as long as they're acceptable. So I don't think we should have had more risks. Of course, from a priority standpoint, I do think the one place that I would think they didn't do it well is, I think, they hit the soft target. Schools closed first. I think that's a wrong thing to do when there's proven evidence worldwide that children and youngsters below a particular age are the least susceptible. Even if they get infected, the infection is not serious. Not just for Omicron variant, but even the previous variants, fatality rates are really low. So I do think that I am a little unhappy that bars and restaurants and casinos and theaters. I understand that they support economic activity. I think they were given more priority over education. It is something that I personally think was not a fair choice. But my big disappointment is, I think even though it's election time, none of the other parties, have objected to this. They are fine with it, and they just went with the populist vote. I don't think that augurs well.
It was lovely talking to you, Professor Parulekar. Thank you so much for your time. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, and my pleasure being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.